2025 meeting of the Faribault Central School District Special Education Support Services and Wellness Committee. Tonight, we're going to be taking one last deep dive into the question of discipline numbers, and then we're going to pivot to other subjects in the meetings ahead. Particularly, we now have a full marking period under our belt. We have a full marking period of the new student information system being used, and we're excited to see what we can do with that. But before that, we'll begin with public comment. Anyway.
I guess we're here from SEPTO. Megan actually, sick or has a kid sick. I'm not sure. I don't know if she's sick or she has a child that's sick or something like that. I think your second topic was that we were just wondering what other topics were going to be covered by the committee through this school year.
Yes, we're very open to suggestions, and I'd actually like to take some time at the end of this meeting to discuss.
Okay.
I know some of the things that we have left over from last year are going through where we are with some of the support services that were added, where that leaves the spectrum of services. And the other part of this, we want to look at athletics data once the new athletic consultant who stepped in interim for Mr. Salomon is up to speed enough to brief us on that. Anything else? All right, and with that.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we do have a full slide deck that was generated from the data that we have from last year, and then this year we looked at it very thoroughly, the three of us, also with Natalia Gritman, our data person and our data guru, and also went over it with the principals and the administrators, assistant principals. So we can go over that. Before we get into that, I thought I would just check in about, I know that there were some questions from the presentation in October about some of the categories like inappropriate behavior, teacher referral. So one thing that we can share is with respect to teacher referrals, what's happening is that if a teacher submits a referral and isn't sure what category it falls under, they're submitting it to the administrator. The administrator is then selecting which category it's supposed to go into. So that's it's kind of the first step, I guess, for the process.
And also the teacher referral category is new this year. There wasn't one last year because it came with the switch to Synergy, the new student information system. And then in line with that also, it is simply the way for a teacher to put a referral into administration and doesn't necessarily always correlate and end up as a discipline incident. So a referral would be to the main office, the building admin, who then are able to take a look over that referral, call the student down, and work through what the follow-up to that is going to be. If it is going to result in a discipline incident with a consequence because it violated the code of conduct, or if it would be more
a counseling,
like supportive type approaches of counseling or mediation or things of that nature.
So hopefully that helps with the category of teacher referral. Yeah. We also drilled down a little bit with inappropriate behavior. And we'll also be able to share a little bit more about that as we go through the data from this year and last year. But what was shared with us, and again, it depends on the various levels, is that sometimes there's behavior. I think one example that might be a good one is a student pushed another in gym class, and it was not necessarily fighting, but it wasn't keeping with the classroom rules, but they didn't want to classify it as fighting because it didn't seem like it was at that level. So that is an example of something that got classified.
Especially at the elementary level. Another example they gave was of splashing water in the bathroom. So yes, inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
So it varied from.
Did we say we were going to try to get where they could give us a narrative though, right?
There are narratives, yes.
So we'll see that tonight.
So I didn't want to pull the narratives because some of them would be identifying.
Oh, they're specific.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to see, like in the form, where there's a spot for a narrative.
Yeah, we can show that. Yeah, and I'll also mention that on Thursday we have our administrative council meeting, and we're going to carve out time during that meeting to go over the process of entering, making sure that the basic elements of a narrative are met in each referral. And also that there's some level of uniformity with how these things are entered. One of the things that you'll see is, I think it says no incident
No
category. We'll
incident
show you.
reported, I think.
Yeah, there was, this, recently there was, although it did show up in the overall numbers, like no incident category or something like that for this past year because there was some, issues with one of the offices, in particular, mistakenly put it underneath the wrong part, but we're fixing that. It didn't impact the overall data, but as far as how those issues, and incidents are reported over the long term, that's currently being worked out. So it's all right. So again, I just want to really give a shout out to Natalia Griffin for helping us with this, and also the administrators for taking a really close look. So if we look at the first quarter of this 2025-26 school year as compared to last year, they see that there is a little bit of an overall drop throughout the district. There are some varying ups and downs for each of the buildings. And what we'll see as far as the percentages go, we will see a increase for the first quarter at the middle school. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them I do think is that we now have a pretty stable administration there. Last year we were still dealing with a lot of turnover, inconsistency, and there's definitely been a strong approach to the code of conduct at the middle school and being consistent with that. So I think that is part of why we'll see an increase.
Yep, and I think it's reasonable to see an increase. Part of the reason we're doing this deep dive into the tooling is so when we do see an increase, we see why. And we see if it's equitable across categories and so forth. I will say, we talked a little bit last time about normalizing some of these numbers per capita because we see 9% fewer incidents, but we also have 100 fewer students in the district than last year.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that is that, some of it isn't, and it's helpful to be able to separate
Sure,
that.
yes, so the raw numbers definitely matter, and I think we might have those coming up. Let's see.
Is this specific to children with IEPs or is this overall?
Right now,
Right
this is
now it's
overall,
overall,
but we
and then
will get to that. Yeah, so I would say that right now, we're just going over general whole district by building, and so these are the raw numbers that contributed to the percentages. Yeah, so there was some level of decrease there. Any questions about that?
Can you go back to the slide before? I'm sorry.
Okay. So again, these are by building, total incidents. And so then we have by grade level. I think a trend that we've been seeing is that 7th and 8th grade tends to be one of our highest grade levels. So overall, as we can see, most of the grade levels had a decrease this year, but some of them that had an increase were 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade.
And 5th grade, which I'm surprised since we've done all this to do the 5th grade academy where we're supposed to be having a more elementary school experience for them. So that's interesting to see that large of a increase.
But I see 2 to 18 and statistically, we don't know, that's incidents, is that could be a few kids who.
Well, hopefully we'll find that
But
out
also
then.
last year, they weren't necessarily logging things appropriately, and now there's like a learning curve that they've achieved.
I will say the bars that have higher raw numbers are more interesting to look at the percentages of, because if you had 2 incidents last year, any change is going to be a large percentage.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay. Again, we can look at the percentages by grade level here, and if there are no questions about that.
This is actually interesting to me because we repeatedly heard reports last year that the 6th grade was if you'll forgive the phrase, people were saying was trouble. And that there were a lot of incidents this year, but what we're seeing looking at the 24, 25
Wasn't very
data
much
is that
at all.
that isn't actually reflected in the
Right.
disciplinary data.
From last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then we see that the seventh grade this year has,
Right, it's the same
Yeah, it's the
students in here,
cohort.
we see it, so what, seventh grade was the majority last year, it's even more so this year,
right,
but it's
Good.
interesting
And
that,
that would maybe tell me that it's the seventh grade teachers that just report more often,
that's also very possible, yeah.
because.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if seventh grade consistently is, seventh and eighth are consistently the largest, does raise a question whether also this is where perhaps students have a little more independence for the first time, get themselves in trouble more, and there's that learning curve, and hopefully by the time they get to ninth and 10th grade.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
are you aware of any tracking of statistics such as this by other districts?
not off the top of my head.
Only
Yes.
because a lot of hormones going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, as someone who's got a few years at both high school and middle school, I would be interested to see what other districts have insofar as the collation of data.
That would be a great
Alright.
study.
Yeah, so we're really, what we really, we're gonna get to it, I'm sure, is what we really need to see is, and that is always given, is what percentage of this is children with IEPs, right? So that's where we're really going.
Yeah, and we will get to that. I do just want to mention, we recently got our state report back showing that there was no, at least as far as the state standard goes, disproportionality. And I know we discussed this last year. We strive to be far better than just achieving the minimum, but that's at least just something I would just mention, is that as far as the state reporting goes, we didn't hit the radar as far as disproportionality, but
Right, but
certainly.
as we covered last time, you have to be massively disproportionate for the state number of chickens.
Yeah, we still, yes, right, that's true, yeah. Okay, so, if you want, I could skip ahead to IEP, or we could
If
start
it's okay,
there.
I'd like to at least see it.
Yeah. Absolutely, so here we have the percentages by race and ethnicity. And again, on the left is 24-25, and on the right is 25-26.
And could you compare this for us? What are the proportions of students, of the student body in each category?
The number,
Because that's how we sort of pull out disproportion.
let me see if that's coming up next. Here, this is the raw numbers, but you mean like with respect to the percentage?
Right, so in
of
other words,
overall?
if,
What population is Asian, what percentage of the population is Black or African American?
right. Because if this matches the proportion of the student body, great, fine. If it's massively different than the proportion of the student body, then there's a suggestion that, yeah, we would need to look into why some categories are being disproportionately disciplined or disproportionately not disciplined.
Yeah, thank you. I know that we could right now pull it up for 24-25, for 25-26, that might be hard. Jen, would you mind going on to the New York State report card, and we can see what the percentages are for 2024-25? The official.
It's pretty close, honestly, because I have looked at the New York State report card at times, and I think it's pretty close to that, like, I want to say like a half and half almost.
Yes, so if the race ethnicity
I
breakdown,
don't know if we're at 40%.
percentage of the population is close to
I
this,
think we're in the
then
30s, right?
Great.
30s.
there you go, moving on. Sounds like
No, I
This
think
year
we're
everything.
compared
higher
to
than
last year?
30s.
So
I
let's
think
find
it's higher
out,
than
so.
30s, because there's even some schools that I was told that they had to do the
Yeah, there's the
dual
kindergarten, yeah, the
language.
kindergarten. So I'm saying from last year, I think we were in the high 30s, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's right, so
I
I'd
think
like
we
to
were
find
like
out.
36 or 38 last year, but
I'm not sure, so
Not
yeah,
100%.
Just let me know if we're able to find out, otherwise I can go on, I can come back to this.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, all right, we'll come back to that. So, and then here are the raw numbers that we have.
Okay, I have it by ethnicity.
Okay, let's go back, yep,
Sorry, 24-25.
yes.
African American, 4%, Hispanic, Latino, 41%,
so that's very similar.
Asian, 2%, white, 50% multiracial, 4%.
Right, so we're right
So
there.
it's within 5%, so that's actually encouraging compared to
It is good.
what we've seen historically.
It's like equity.
It's good.
Thank you.
Good quarters.
Any other questions there before we move on?
Okay.
All right, and then here are our raw numbers for those incidents. Again, I think overall we see some similarity from last year to this year as far as this goes, but a little bit of a drop in the Black or African American category. And here we have 24, 25 incidents by type. So I think we've seen this before. I can go on to the next slide. But as you'll see, we have inappropriate behavior up there at 238. And then for 25, 26, there was a significant decrease and in that area in particular.
Right, but corresponding increase in no incident type.
Yes, right, exactly. So let me just go back, because that was not there last year. It was there this year because, again, some things to work out with respect to the new data system. So I think for this, we might want to just add 133 plus 61. It
Yeah,
would
so-
still be a little bit of a drop, 238 to, this one, let me see, 133 plus 61 is
Yeah, so
194.
194.
Yeah.
Which,
So,
bearing in mind that there's a decrease in the total number of incidents too. so.
yes, right. Okay. Back to this. So students with IEPs. So this is the number of students with IEPs in comparison to the total number of incidents. So for last year, with respect to inappropriate behavior, it was 90 students with IEPs out of a total of 238 incidents. And then, as you can see with the
Could
other
you go back
numbers.
one for a second? I just wonder.
Sure, back to the- This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Are you going back to 24, 25?
yeah, so insubordination is the highest category here. It seems it's substantially lower than the previous. Can you-
Yeah, it went from
can you jump
16
back?
to 8, I think.
No, but okay, so this is still general population?
This
And
is-
then,
This is general.
okay, and then could you jump forward to the IP? So same, good.
So 6 out of the 16.
Correct. Yes.
Do you have percentages?
Let's see. Yes, we will get to those, definitely. Let me just see. And then here's a 25, 26. We can come back to this. But here is, this is total number of incidents. Looking at students with IEPs and also students with 504s and students who are in the general education without either type of plan.
So we're,
IEPs are going up.
can you go back?
Yes.
So we're saying that 35% of all incidents in first quarter in 24, 25 was students with disabilities? And now it's almost
26%.
50%?
Yeah.
So that is very
Over
disproportionate.
50%, in fact.
When we only have 18, our concentration is 18%.
Yeah, so what's our percentage of students total in the
It
district?
was 18 when I looked at the last
Right.
report from you.
So for IEP and for 504,
For IEP and 504, it's probably around 26.
between the two of them, so it's a 2-to-1 disproportion. We have 26%.
Yeah, but I think we should keep the 504 out of it. I think it's a different conversation because what they're entitled to for disciplinary is very different legally.
Right,
So, I mean,
but even so,
46%.
Yeah.
When we are at 18%, you're the math guy. That's huge.
yeah, no, you're right,
I only use the word huge because I'm not a math person.
Right, that's a 2.5 to 1.
yes.
How many have
disproportion.
behavioral
5 to 2.
plans? Any way to know that?
We can
But
certainly run a
That
list.
wouldn't matter with disciplinary because
Well,
if
because-
it's not part of, these are disciplinary, so they're not
Because-
gonna be.
Yeah, but how many are becoming classified as disciplinary when really there should be a bit in there that the consequence is not necessarily to be going to the principal's office.
But that should be happening, so if that's not happening, right, like that's a failure, but, I mean, I'm looking at this, that those things are in place, so I'm not looking at
So
this.
you're assuming none of those 46 have a bit?
I'm assuming that they are being appropriately educated within our district and that their IEPs are being followed. That's the only way I can look at that. if the answer to, if administration's answer back to us is, wow, 46% out of, it should be 18, that we have an issue here, I need to take a deep dive, and they come back to us next month and say, we've sent 40 kids for FBAs, I'll be very happy with that answer. But sitting here right now, the only thing I can assume is that our administration is giving us data that IEPs are being followed, and if a child needs an FBA, which results in a VIP, that is being followed.
Is there any idea, is this because we didn't have not that we've had a BCBA, but a behavioralist, really wasn't in play for the first quarter?
I will say that,
We need,
although we didn't have the full-time behaviorist because the person started last week,
Yeah.
we didn't want to settle, quite honestly. That's part of why we didn't hire until we found the right person. And she was available to start this past week. We were getting through with support from contractors. The
supports are still
incidents,
there.
I'm sorry,
Our
the
supports are still there.
I would say that the overall, at least the vast majority, because we have looked through all of the narratives and everything, I don't think that impacted these numbers. Especially because the full-time behaviorist works primarily with our PACE programs, and these numbers are predominantly not.
Not PACE, okay.
I hate to be that broken record, not that any kid said any over record, but I look at these stats, and without being able to compare them relatively to the stats of other districts, I feel like we could be looking at this in an alarmist way, but if they're close to what other districts are, then it's not karma.
So I would caution against going down that road, because our goal is to meet state requirements of equity between the categories. If other districts are failing to do that, that doesn't change our goal. Just like we know that nationwide, Black students are suspended at a much higher rate than white students. If we found the same correlation in our data, we wouldn't say, well, other districts have the same problem, look, nationwide, this is happening, therefore it's okay.
It doesn't change our goal, but it informs us as to the breadth of the issue.
I agree, but we see, at the end of the day, we can't fix other districts, and we're responsible to fix this one.
There are more slides, so I think some of the questions that are coming up, we might find some answers to as we go along. If not, we can come back and then face in the other information, see if we can figure out some of the answers, and if not, then certainly what we need to find out to bring back to the next committee meeting. So here we have, again, last year to this year, discipline incidents by school and by the status as far as IEP or 504 or general education without a 504. That's what the grade is. So
yeah, pause for a second. Catch up.
So clearly we have, and I know you did mention that the caveat is that we have different administrators in our middle school this year than we did last year. But we did have, we had an administrator, we had a principal last year. So I don't know if that can necessarily account for this high of an increase. What I am liking it to see is that all discipline has risen. It's not like just IEP students have risen. Gen Ed discipline has also risen. I don't like that it's not in proportion to the percentage of what the Gen Ed population is and the IEP population is, but it is, I'd be really feeling nervous if it was just our IEP students that went up, so there is that. So clearly there's something different in our middle school, so whatever that is, I think you guys can get us some more information, and it may just be that, this new principal is very, very strict about his code of conduct and is telling all of his administrators, you need to do this, and that may be that simple of an answer.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I mean, through the sheriff's department, I've heard that too, that it's very positive, in a positive way, that he is holding these kids accountable.
That's not answering, I think, Jim and my
Right,
major concern about the disproportionality of why we have an 18% IEP percentage in the middle school and 46% of our kids of disciplinary infractions are going to 18% of the population.
yeah.
That needs to be explored, and maybe you're gonna show that to us in the next couple of slides.
So just back of the envelope, looking at these numbers, reinforcing what you're saying, there is a very strong difference between schools. And I do want to say, we're looking at 18% district-wide. We can refine by looking at the percentages in each building. But looking at 24, 25 first, Kent Elementary School, Kent Primary School are both about correct in the sense that about 18% of disciplinary incidents are IEP based. Matthew Patterson, which is at the same level of those, is significantly higher than 18%. And then the high school is significantly higher than 18%. Both are about 2-to-1 ratio. And then the George Fisher Middle School is higher still. We see the same, what looks like the same pattern. I do want to bear in mind Jordy's point about where the numbers are very small. We can't reason usefully about percentages. But we do see that Matthew Patterson and George Fisher both seem to have this pattern in both years, or particularly this year, of 50% of disciplinary incidents being students with IEPs, whereas we think about 20% of the student body have IEPs. That worries me.
Sure.
And it does raise a question. This year, there's none, we don't have enough data yet to look at the numbers, but it looks like last year there were striking differences between the schools in whether there was disproportion or not, even at the same level. And then the question is this question of disproportion being treated more seriously at some elementary schools than others?
And we can talk about that a little bit after we get through some of the data, some of the things that we are putting in place,
Yep.
District-wide, Tier 1, so to say, and then also at the higher tier levels when it comes to supports.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to kind of look at the data of what these incidents are, like what are these incidents?
I think we can, again, we want to be careful not to share anything that someone might have heard about through somebody, in the community and something like that,
No, I mean, just the
careful
list, right? So
Yeah.
like, what are?
in terms of like the number,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one thing I'd like to see is a stronger push as we train the administrations, that even if an incident comes in with no incident type or just as inappropriate behavior, after the fact, when we know more, we should be categorizing it.
Yes, and that is going to be the subject of our then council meeting this Thursday, is exactly that.
Yep.
So, thank you. So we will have, and I can certainly come back to the next meeting and share the update if there's.
What I say is we'll wait, and then at the end, either at the end of the second or at the end of the third marking period,
Okay.
we'd like to see a similar roundup.
Sure, okay, we can definitely do that. All right, so I think we just looked at this, but let's see. So here's a pie chart, showing the, the percentages and the numbers, for the high school
Dr.
last year compared to this year.
So everything is in incidents, but not by students. So the
This-
number of students. So one student could have 5 incidents. So is there any way to meta the data
Just by the
and
number of students.
discipline students disciplined by disability status?
I would
Yes.
also say average number of incidents per student by just.
We can do that.
Well, no, because then if you've got 5 students and one student has 10, well, then the average for everyone is 2. So I'm more looking for, how many students are we talking here? And then that number of students percentage of the population.
Yes, yeah, we can do that.
Can you repeat that? I was just taking notes and,
So
lost in the sauce.
the question, so there were two additional statistics, which is percentage of students who have had a disciplinary incident in each category, and also average number of disciplinary incidents per student. I agree with you that in principle might be, the average is gonna be higher than the median. But it's also true that we would expect the average, it to be similar between the categories.
I would rather, the point of data that would help me the most with
Okay,
this,
unique,
to look at the equity.
make sure that it's a unique, like, it is unique, each incident is unique, so we need to know if it's one person having 17 disciplinaries, because that would
Right,
only
so-
actually be one person, right, one student.
Right, so instead of, for instance, and not
We
instead.
got that
in-
last year, remember?
in
We
addition
did
to
have that at some
Quarter
point.
one
think we
discipline
did.
incident
I can
plus
do it- I can
ability
word it,
status.
yeah. And it wasn't that
Quarter
different,
one
remember?
students
We were
disciplined
surprised that it wasn't that different.
Yes.
by disability status.
Yeah, and I would like to have
Oh,
both.
maybe
One
it's
student
one
has
kid.
an
All these
incident.
things, yeah.
It's one student.
We did.
And it allows us to see really how many students, because this winds up depending, you could have a frequent flyer who, whether with an IEP or not, could really skew data.
So
Or
percentage in
skewed
each category.
perception.
Percentage in each category, average number of incidences per student, quarter by discipline status, and then quarter by last one.
Students disciplined.
So students discipline quarter to Jordy's point, and I'd also like to see average number of incidents per student.
So I got that.
As a teacher of, like I said, a few years, every school, we're going to have a student periodic leave for, if you have 100 students, there are 10,000 reasons.
I mean, if you keep pushing, I'll ask for error bars.
Okay, we're ready to go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, wait a second, I just went through
Are
it.
parents
Okay.
notified every time a student hits one of these criteria at the end of as an incident?
Yes, I mean, yes, if it went to this level, then definitely, yeah. So, and I think as a general practice too, but we will also follow up on that, like if something becomes like a conversation, obviously the best practice is for the parent to be informed, but something that it results in like a counseling conversation wouldn't fall here, but still we do certainly try to make sure that there's parent communication with those as well.
I'm curious too, at the middle school, I know before the previous 2 years, was there, I could be totally wrong, I believe there was only one ICT class, and the past 2 years, that has expanded.
It has, yes, there are more ICT sections than there were before.
Sort of that has played
That's a point.
part into that.
Um,
I just even know my personal students might get like, there's, they're wonderful teachers, but, they might just be misunderstanding how something,
Sure.
came across because it's,
Yeah.
he messed something up
Okay,
in the schedule, but he was supposed to,
okay.
he truly didn't know, you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious, because
I don't know if that would necessarily rise to discipline, that would just be like a classroom modification.
No, I guess I'm just saying is, because since that program had expanded so much in the school, and I don't know if they.
We
used
we
to-
have special ed teachers in all our ICT programs full time, so
At the middle school.
shouldn't be happening. And that's, I mean, it would be sad to say that's what causes ICT folks, should have a skilled special educator that understands unique needs.
All right, that's the
I mean,
middle
I
school.
think that's the bottom line, is we really need them to come back to us with what's going on. It's one thing to know what's happening, it's a whole other thing to know.
So we have the number of incidents of cutting class and subordination, things like that.
Can we see that
You can
in
go
for the
back.
IEPs, for the
For
IEP
IEP.
students? Yes, because that's really what I'm concerned with in this setting, is what is going on with our classified students? What is because if it is cutting class, then I'm in agreement here that we need to be looking at the program. If a kid isn't going to a class, there's a reason for that, especially if they're a child with special needs. Like, what's the reason? What class is it? Why aren't they attending it? Especially at a middle school level, like really, what we have to do, these kids are underserved by not being in class. They have certain hours that they're supposed to be with an special educator, and if they're not there, our district is underserving them. So, to me, it's very important to know what are the incidents of these children. If it's insubordination, what does that mean? What's happening? Is it a non-skilled gen ed teacher that doesn't understand a disability like ODD or ADHD, and they're having conflicts with the student where it's really not the student, it's the teacher that needs education. So I think that I need to understand this better,
So the number of,
but to understand it better, I need to understand what the incidents are, that 50% of our discipline is falling on 18% of our population.
Right.
That is not a good thing.
so you can see the trends as far as
Right.
if it's mostly.
Right, and it could be, I mean, you guys can see it and the board can see it in executive session, and maybe that's what we do. Are these disciplines coming from a certain
Well, but
set of teachers?
I think, listen, so the way you framed that is falling on X percentage of our population. We don't know that from this data because we don't have number of students involved in the discipline.
But we know
Well,
that,
but
but
we
we
do
do
know that
know
from
that
that
the
data.
overall discipline is 50%. And that we also know that the overall amount of students that are identified are 18%.
Right, it's,
No,
well,
what we know
with
is-
respect,
That's what we know.
But according to all of the data that I'm seeing, what we know is the number of incidents, not the number of students.
so 50% of
Of the
disciplinary
incidents, right.
incidents fall within 18% of our student body.
Correct.
It is possible that 50% of our incidents fall in one student, if some are doing a terrible job.
So we're doing a
That's
very bad
great.
job.
So then,
But it still is,
Even if it's
remains
falling on
true.
5 students, we're doing a very bad job.
yeah, because then you wind up approaching
Mhm.
the issue differently.
Well, that's why
I
I'm saying
agree
we
with that.
need, we
We
need
need
all
more-
of that
we need more
information to be able to advise of how the board would like this to be. The bottom line is, I think the three of us want this result. We wanna see data that is reflective of our student population.
Yep.
That's what we wanna see.
We can certainly run both those reports, the number of students with IEPs who have had, and the number of incidents they've had, as well as the types of the incidents, that way we can see.
And that 48% of incidents is that, how many students is that reflective of? And that should be a pretty easy data point.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Okay, here we have Kent Primary. The numbers are smaller here, so it's a little different.
Well, that's
than what we just saw.
proportional. I mean, there's nothing not, I mean, the 504 is maybe a little high, but,
Mhm.
you know, it's
Not this
proportional.
year. This year it's almost 50-50.
Yes, this year it is.
Which said, to Georgie's point earlier, these are small enough numbers
Right.
that
Right,
a
those
swing of
8
4
incidents
incidents
could be
would.
very easily 2
Yeah.
kids,
Right.
very easily.
And I would also, like, only because I personally knows, like, there is a change in programming within Kent Primary as well. So that could be skewing numbers, where we have the 611 room in there that's new compared to last year. Last year we had a PACE room, right? Like
Yes, there was
813
one.
PACE room in there, so it's different cohorts.
We also have the special class for grades, a special class for grades 3 and 4.
I
But
really hope that we are not doing discipline in that formal of a way for children that are in a self-contained 612. And if we are, then the board has a bigger issue to talk about.
That's
so I think your point is just that there are more students with IEPs in the building than
And
there have been.
I would say more, I don't know the right language to use, but probably higher needs than Kent Primary is used to. So even though that one class, I think there's kids that they had a bit of a learning curve this quarter, getting over, trying to figure out of it. So it's not, when I'm talking, that program that's in there now is not an ICT class. It's not kids that maybe
Right, it's a
need to be
612,
switched.
yeah, no, I'm
it's-
familiar.
it's-
I'm
It's
familiar,
intense in
sure.
there.
I think what I'm saying is those classes usually are not the classes that are having referral for discipline.
Right.
Those classes very seldomly come out, because that's usually all of behavioral, like whatever's going on in there is usually a manifestation of their disability. We don't need to be invoking discipline on this level. They're not getting suspended, they're not getting detention.
I think it's worth
I mean,
mentioning.
they could, it happens, I've seen it.
it's also.
But it's very rare and it
We only
usually
have
is
one more
then
student.
a change in placement.
We went from
We're
7
putting
to
somebody out having a manifestation hearing because the district needs to change the placement. It's not because
I just
the
want to,
kid, you know, is late to class.
Well,
I definitely want to point out, we only had one student more
one
from
incident-
last year.
One
Right,
incident more.
the
I'm sorry,
percentage,
when it's
yeah, and I
more,
think,
you're
right, like, we're able to
that's
see
Right,
that
you just have less 504s, so it.
And we must
Right.
have less students,
Which is why that
Right.
went up so high,
Right, KPS itself has less students.
I don't
so-
understand that, but that I understand. We have to have a less whole number for
Right.
that percentage to have gone up. so
And I
much.
do want to make sure we keep going forward because Matthew Patterson himself was a very strong, much stronger disproportion, so I'm
Okay.
interested to see that. But
Right.
there it is.
Now, I'm gonna like fully disclose like personal stuff here for Matthew Patterson, first quarter, my son was in there and was taken out of class a lot. Was not in school and ultimately had to get transferred over to a base classroom. So when your statement is like they don't discipline,
But disciplines where he was suspended?
he was in an in-school suspension room for a long time.
which, yeah,
So
that
it's,
seems
but
strong.
so
So-
like an ice, like where they were changing his placement.
I ultimately had to change his placement.
Is that
and
gonna
out of
be
there.
data that's in here or not?
That's why I was never notified formally of being like included in this kind of data.
Because you're probably not. It was probably more.
So
of
my
the-
son, when I would drop him off in the morning, I watched, and they brought him to Mrs. Robel's office, where he sat outside Mrs. Robel's office, not into his classroom. So if that is not in that data, then I don't know why, like, I wouldn't know why.
You would be
but-
formally notified of any discipline. And if your child has an IEP and it was longer than 5 days, you're entitled to a legal manifestation hearing. So if none of those things happen, then your child was probably, like, it might, I mean, I'm shooting in the wind here, but I worked in schools long enough. If they were not being able to effectively educate him where he was, but they felt that there was room in the building that they could, it may have just been some time where they were trying to get staff and move your child around, but I don't know.
I mean, I don't know that either,
Did you have a
Okay.
formal CSE meeting?
No,
to move
I
the child?
was actually going through breast cancer at the exact same time, and so for me to get him out of that situation, we had to put him in his classroom.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
No, but I've just said that when you're saying like this shouldn't be happening to kids with NCF contained rooms, I don't know if that's necessarily always the case.
So if there's something like that and you have spoken to administration as your first line and it hasn't
Well,
worked.
Dr. Kennedy stepped in and she corrected it immediately.
So
Yeah,
So Dr. Kennedy,
But-
if you're talking about it openly, Dr. Kennedy should be able to answer. Was her child
I'm
formally?
not gonna discuss a student.
So what I'm
Yeah,
asking you is,
I think
I
that's.
will not
no,
be
I'm
discussing a
saying-
student.
I'm gonna answer the question. You would have that information if her child was formally disciplined, and you can call her tomorrow and let her know if her child was formally disciplined.
I will be
Yeah, I
happy to
think
follow
that's-
Mrs. Miller.
no, when Dr. Kennedy found out what was happening, he was moved out of that
Yeah,
placement
so I-
immediately.
This is a public and recorded meeting.
Right, so
I
I
think
have
we
no,
to be
we
very
can't,
careful.
there's no way for us to tell you if your child was part of this
No,
information.
Yeah,
But Dr. Kennedy can and will tomorrow, yes?
I will be in touch with.
Yeah. Because we don't know that.
I'm just saying that it's when we make these assumptions that certain things that we have to assume that IEPs are being followed, we have to assume that. I think as you're digging into data, I think that's going to start to come to fruition.
And
I agree
think
with that.
And I
I
think
agree
it's
with that. Sure.
information like this, and then hearing that Dr. Kennedy was able to jump in and correct it. Information like this allows us to see what needs to be addressed. And if we don't hear members of the community come forward, and if we don't hear things like this, we don't know what needs to be addressed. So I would like to say thank you for bringing this.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Forward.
I don't, I'm very open because not only do I want to make things better for my kids, but I want to make sure that things are better for everyone else as well.
No, and I-
So,
And I want to be really clear, I don't want to shut down the line of questioning at all. I think this is very, very important to Jordan's point that you're bringing this forward. I'm just very mindful that I don't want to put Dr. Kennedy on the spot,
No, either do I,
not being
yeah.
able to answer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
wasn't
that's-
asking her to answer today, I was asking her to reach out.
No, I agree,
because
I agree with
Dr.
you one
Kennedy-
aspect.
we don't have that information.
Sounds
I
like-
know, I understand that.
Sounds like you're good with Dr. Kennedy.
My work is that
Yes.
people watching at
Yes.
home see the question asked
Next.
and don't see the answer.
Yes.
They're left
They're not
wondering,
entitled-
yeah.
People at home aren't entitled to an
I
answer about a
100%
specific
agree,
student.
but I think you bringing forward the reassurance that it will be answered out of hand
absolutely.
is very helpful.
Yes, yes. But I think that the point taken is that, I think there's two pieces. The board, when we're getting high-level information from our high-level administrators, we have to be sitting here, from where we're sitting is that this information is not only accurate, but that IEPs are being followed, right? That is what we have to assume as board members. So it isn't unless and until we hear something like you just said that would be, like a red flag, that we would be able to, not in a public meeting, but at another point in time, get more information about something like that. It's not that we didn't hear you, it's that when we make assumptions, it's because this is information and data that is being given to us by our administration, and we trust and work, we have to trust and work with our administrators, and we have to trust and believe that what we're seeing right here, but as you can tell, we do dig down and we ask more questions, and we will ask them to bring stuff back.
The data's not even, Dr. Kennedy doesn't own the data though, because it's being done at the building level, the administration level, the teacher level.
Agreed.
So it's, you can't, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak, but you can't necessarily control that all the input in the data is correct, because you're not sitting in every single school all day long watching everything that's going on.
Right,
It's
which
physically impossible.
Which is why the
Why we're
takeaway-
asking these questions.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why the takeaway we have when we see that 190 incidents, a majority of the incidents are either uncategorized or categorized just as inappropriate behavior. We're pushing back down to the buildings that we need to train the administration and going
Yeah.
back to categorizing these. Strongly.
And looking at our practices, obviously, we all want the same thing. We want the best for all of our students. We want equity. We want, and certainly we have an hour in these meetings, but these are topics that can certainly take much longer to thoroughly discuss. So,
And on that
Yes.
segue, we do have about 2 minutes left. So
Got
if you want to get the press, and then we'll take
Sure.
5 minutes to discuss
so
future
that,
agenda items.
thank you. So that was the end of that slideshow, but we
Okay,
definitely have the follow-up points. So did anyone want me to go back to the October presentation where we talked about how the information is entered and what the narrative looks like?
I think we'll have to hold that for the next time we discuss this data, just based on time. I think we wouldn't have time to do it justice. I do want to sort of pull the room, subjects we want to discuss going forward. I know one of them is sports, which is sort of holding pattern until the athletic consultant is up to speed. and is
Yeah, I
able to
do.
speak to that.
I would like to have a pretty robust conversation about MTSS and RTI. I really would like to understand exactly what's being offered and at each grade level.
And where there are differences between buildings at the same government as well. Yeah.
It's for somebody who could not attend, they want more information about the unified sports,
That's a good point, because that is.
like how,
Where are we?
communication about how and when to sign up. And that's not, like, a typical modified sports program.
So I
And just
know,
in general, communication from schools, teachers, and therapists. They're finding it difficult because it's coming from many different sources. Like Parent Square, Parent View, regular email, and I don't think everything is so they just
That makes sense.
screw that up.
I can comment briefly on the unified sports. That is something that we as the board had brought to the athletic director previously. They had begun moving forward with the interim athletic director coming in. It's something that we will be bringing. There are local districts who have robust unified programs. Not everyone understands what unified programs are. They are incredible, and we as the board are big fans and advocates for it, and we want to see Carmel unified participation increase. And
Trustee, if I can just add
Yeah.
one thing, just
Yeah.
to follow up on a past meeting and also some things about MTSS, which we'll talk about more. Everyday Speech, the program we talked about, I think, in September.
Yep.
All the buildings have been provided training about that.
Very nice.
So that's a tier 1, 2, and 3 social emotional support. Second Step has also been brought to throughout the district in different capacities. One is at our middle school A school program, the school counselor is using that with her students. And we can give some more examples about that, but I just thought I'd share that for now as it relates to this.
That's very helpful as an update, and indeed we'll dive deeper in that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Going around?
Two things. One would be the lack of adaptive gym, so APE.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how we're getting away with not having that. I can't speak for the high school or middle school, but at the elementary level, it does not seem that they have it. And then the second thing is just understanding more about related provider training and making sure that they're staying up to date on the most updated things. I have shared with you, like, the level of treatment between a private provider and a school provider seems very different. More updated research and things on autism, like Gestalt learners and things like, it just doesn't seem like that's really something that providers are talking with. And ultimately it leads to, the child not necessarily getting the best and most latest treatments, and only families that can, get private. It just doesn't see that just seems disproportionate to me, that if the reliance is on the school district to be able to treat the child, that I don't know if our related providers are really being held to the same level of training and standard that you can get at the privatized level of things. I personally see that constantly. And it just doesn't, it's just not necessarily fair, quite honestly, for, some parents being able to get that for their kids and others not being able to.
Thank you. And for PPS, I'll ask you guys as a whole. Anything else?
Sure.
That we should cover?
We will be happy to come back with the items that we talked about here and a complete update on RTI and education. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
everybody.
So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting and we'll pick up again, not the next board meeting, but at the following.
See y'all in the new year.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yes, very much so.